watching Gearz.
Hey, welcome to Gearz. You know, one question that I get a lot is, if you were to build a really cool vehicle and give it away, what would it be? Well, that is a really interesting question, because generally when somebody does a giveaway vehicle, you don't really get the good stuff. I mean, they generally take a stock vehicle and do a few things to it, and that's what you get. Now, that's fine, it's free, so, you know, that's okay. But it's not usually something that an enthusiast would want, like something like this. So they win it, they put it on eBay, and they get rid of it. So to keep that from happening, I'd probably hook up with an iconic name in the industry like Armor All. And then I'd probably hook up with a driver that I like, you know, Tony Stewart, somebody like that. And then I'd start with a vehicle that was already cool, like a Corvette. I mean, nobody gives away a Corvette. Then I'd build that car into a world-class supercar. I mean, something that'd run 180 miles an hour or better. Now that would be a cool giveaway car, and something that everybody would want to own and only one person would get to have. Well, for one of you guys out there, we are about to start building your car. Now, I know you thought that I was kidding. What I've got here is a brand new Corvette that Armor All, Tony Stewart, and Gearz have teamed up on to build a one-of-a-kind car for one lucky gearhead. Okay, if you've picked up just about any car magazine lately, you know that the big news is the ZR1 Corvette. I mean, this is a bad boy. It's got over 600 horsepower, it's got over a 200-mile-an-hour top speed, and a price tag of about $150,000. Yeah, it's not cheap. So what we're gonna do is show you how to take a base Vette like this, and for a fraction of this kind of money, build a real supercar out of it that'll blow right past the Z06 Corvette and give this ZR1 a run for its money. Now, to make this car even more unique, we're gonna call it Old Smoke, because first of all, that's Tony Stewart's nickname. Second of all, this thing should smoke just about anything on the road. All right, the first thing we need to do is get some serious power happening here. Remember, the ZR1's got over 600 horsepower. So how do we hit that kind of number, still keep this thing reliable and not void the warranty and all that stuff? Simple. We're gonna use twin turbos. Check this out. The kit that we're using comes from STS Turbo Systems, and it includes everything, man. Take a look at this. You got dual turbochargers, a couple of oil pumps, new fuel injectors, new waste gates, a couple of wiring harnesses, all kinds of hardware. You've got hoses, you've got clamps, you have a couple of K&N filters, and you've got a new intercooler to keep that charge nice and cool. Now, you're probably looking at all this stuff going, you know, that's not too bad. That doesn't look like too much stuff. That's because you're not seeing all the tubing that goes with the kit. Now you're probably looking at this going, oh man, that's a lot of tubing. That's because these turbos mount in back of the car in place of the muffler, and then this tubing carries the charge up to the motor. Now, you're probably going, whoa, wait a minute. That's goofy, man. Who thought that up? That'll never work. Well, not only will it work, but this system has the potential to give that engine over 650 horsepower. That's on pump gas, reliable enough to drive every day, something that you can actually install in your garage. So, what do you say we get on this? The first stop is under the hood, and we'll get rid of the plastic covers, the airbox, and all this plastic intake tubing. Okay, what we are going to replace all this with is this new metal intake tube, which looks a lot better than this plastic junk that came from the factory. Now check this out. You got a nice spot here for your mass airflow sensor to slide in. It just screws in place. That's cool. And then this big old boy here is your blow-off valve or your pop-off valve. Now this is really important if you're running a supercharger or a turbo, because what happens, you're running down the road, you got the throttle open, the turbos are spooling up, you got boost happening, then you lift off the throttle plates close, and all that boost has got to go somewhere. That's where this opens and releases that pressure. If you don't have this, I promise you're gonna blow something up. This is gonna give you an idea kind of what this is gonna look like. Now obviously, it's not gonna sit up this high because it's got to go down through this plastic radiator shroud. So all I'm doing now is marking the shroud, and then we'll take it off, cut it out, set everything aside for later on when we get the intercooler in. The next step is to get the valve covers off because we need to modify them a little bit. So off come the coil packs, followed by the valve covers. Now, the turbos for this system are lubricated by engine oil. And basically what happens is that these pumps pump oil from the engine, run it through the turbos, and then it goes back to the engine through all this hosing and enters through these valve covers. So while you are away at break, we're gonna drill and tap these valve covers for these fittings, so when we come back, we can stick those turbos on the car. Hey, welcome back to Gearz. The project that we've got going today is one that a lot of you guys have been waiting a long time to see, because we hooked up with Armor All and Tony Stewart to create a one-of-a-kind supercar called Old Smoke, and then Armor All is going to give it away. Now at this point, we are just starting to unleash the incredible potential of that stock LS3 engine by sticking on twin turbos from STS Turbo. Now I know some of you guys are going, oh man, you're crazy. How can you take a brand new $50,000 car and start tweaking on it? Well, number one, stock is a bad word because you can always make something better, stronger, and faster than it was before. Number two, it's not my car, man. It belongs to one of you. At this point, we are ready to move to the back of the car because we need to get rid of these stock mufflers and tailpipes to make room for those turbos. So, let's get back to work. And I promise I'll do my best not to scratch your car. With the mufflers removed, we'll go ahead and pull out the center exhaust and the center access panel. We're going to set those aside because we need to reuse them. All right, we got some room under here. Now it's time to start putting things on, starting with these electric oil pumps. So come on under here, take a look at what we got. As you can see, the pumps are mounted side by side back here on the rear frame rail. And what happens is that the oil comes from the engine in this hose, goes in the top of the turbochargers, comes out the bottom of the turbo into this hose, then it runs down into the pump, out here where it goes into another hose that goes back up to the engine, into the fittings that we put into the valve covers earlier. So you can see that those pumps are pretty important. Now it's time for the lines. With the pumps in place, we'll run the stainless lines and the wiring harnesses to the front of the car by tucking them up into the center hump and wire tying them out of the way. Now we come to the part that everybody's been wondering about. This turbo system. How in the world does this actually work? Well, it's pretty simple. Let's check it out. These pipes here bolt right to the stock Corvette exhaust pipes. The exhaust runs up over the rear end, down into the turbos, spools those up, and then exits out the center pipes. Then your fresh air from your filter comes in the turbo here. It's compressed and spooled up, comes out here, goes up to the motor in the form of boost. Now these pipes are actuated by the wastegates. When too much pressure is built up in these pipes, wastegates open and relieves the pressure out these exterior pipes. Now if you'll notice, you have 4 tail tips just like a stock Corvette. So if you don't know this system's on here, when you look at the back of this car, you'll never suspect it. That's a cool thing. Also, notice that all this stuff fits right in the area of these big old cumbersome stock mufflers. Now, speaking of mufflers, you might notice that there aren't any on here. It's because you don't need them. The action of the exhaust going through the turbos quiets it down enough to where you don't need mufflers. And it gives this thing one of the most incredible sounds out of a tailpipe that you'll ever hear. Believe me, there'll be no mistaking this car when it comes blowing by. Now you have got to admit, old Smoke is gonna be awesome. Oh man, I wish it was mine. That's cool. Hey, we're back. And we got a great project going today because we're taking a brand new Corvette and turning it into a supercar called Old Smoke. Now this is a joint project between us and our buddies Tony Stewart and Armor All Racing. And the best part is, when we're done with this car, it's gonna be given away. So, if you're interested in it, you need to go to the Armor All website because they're the ones doing the contest. In the meantime, I am right in the process of putting twin turbos on this thing. Now, the only thing that's a little odd about this STS system is that the turbos are mounted up underneath where the muffler used to be instead of up under the hood where you would expect it to be. So, the question is, how do we get all this great boost from the back of the car all the way up to the front? Well, we do it with tubing. Come on. Now, I know your first thought is, oh man, this looks like the Alaskan pipeline. There is no way all of this stuff is going to fit under that car and not hang down or rub the tires or something like that. Well, you're going to be surprised because this stuff does actually fit underneath that car so well that you're not even going to know it's there, even if you're looking for it. The first step is to pop out the taillights and install the upper pipe and the K&N filter behind the lights. Now I know this sounds weird, but there's plenty of cool fresh air back here to feed the turbos. Now, as you probably guessed, we're gonna run some of that tubing into these fender wells. So, first thing we need to do is get rid of this plastic liner. Then we'll install the other inlet pipes coming from the filter to the inlet of the turbo, as well as the outlet pipes coming from the turbo. The next pipe to go on is this big long one, and it hides in the rocker panel, travels all the way down the length of the car to the front. The problem is, we can't just slide it down the rocker panel yet because it hits the rotor. So we need to undo this lower ball joint, jack up this rotor, then we can slide the pipe in. The final piece of tubing to go on the rear is this piece here. Now, as you probably guessed, this is the one that slides up here into the wheel arch. Now notice how it completely disappears. Come here, check this out. The tubing tucks into this little notch here, goes over the top of the wheel well, and then down toward the front. Now the best part about this though, is when we put that plastic back in here, all of this is going to pretty much disappear, leaving very little clues as to why this car is so fast. The last piece of tubing to go on goes in the front, and what it does is connect the pipe that came from the rear to the intercooler up in the front. Now, notice this has got a lot of really interesting bends in it and some brackets welded on. That is so it will fit properly. Check it out. We'll follow that up with the intercooler and the final hookups, and the system is in. And that takes care of the turbo install on old Smoke. Now, I know you're dying to hear this thing run and go down the road, but no, you gotta wait, because we got a few things we still want to put on this. Then we're gonna give it a good test drive before we toss one of you guys the keys. Now, if you're wondering just what it is exactly we've got here, well, you're gonna have to keep watching Gearz.
Parts Bin, brought to you by Cherry Bomb, disturbing the peace since 1968.
There's no doubt that everybody likes to put the good stuff on their project. I'm talking wheels and tires and hoods and superchargers, that kind of stuff. And that's great. But one of the most important parts to put on any project is hardware, because that's what holds everything together. The problem is, this is what most people have sitting in a drawer in their shop. And you end up digging through it, trying to find the right hardware for your project. So the question is, where do you find the good stuff? I got a name for you, Gardner-Westcott. Check it out. They've got specialty hardware with hex head, Allen head, button heads in polished stainless steel and chrome. They even have bolts with your favorite logo stamped right in. On top of that, they have complete engine dress-up kits so you can get everything you need in one package. So, if you're wanting to put the finishing touch on your project with some really nice fasteners, Gardner-Westcott is just a phone call away. If you're thinking about doing a restoration, or if you're already involved in one, you know you're gonna have to spend some time underneath your vehicle. The question is, how do you get underneath there and still be able to work? Well, the answer is you need a rotisserie like this one from Accessible Systems. Check this out. It is completely adjustable here in the center, so you can adjust it to the length of your vehicle. Then these end pieces bolt underneath it, and then you just jack it up. Then you come to the best part of the rotisserie, and the whole reason for having it. You rotate it up on its side, giving you complete access to the bottom of the vehicle. What a great tool. But it gets even better. Accessible Systems designs these things on wheels so you can literally take your project wherever you need to, the paint shop, a buddy's house, whatever you need to do. A rotisserie is without a doubt one of the best investments you can make, and it's also the one tool that all of your buddies are going to want to borrow. And how you handle that is up to you. All right, everybody knows that there is a lot of plastic on cars and trucks these days. And one problem that we all face is old lenses like this that get nasty and dirty and milky over time. But what do you do with something like that besides replace it? Well, Metal Armor has got a kit specifically for buffing that kind of stuff out. Take a look at it. It includes all the polishes and the compounds to get those scratches out, as well as all the buffs and the applicator pads, so there's no guesswork here. This simple little kit will allow you to go from this to this in just a few minutes. And for those of you with Jeeps, convertible tops, with the plastic windows that get all nasty and hazy, this can help you out. So if you want your parts still looking good without having to replace them, you need to talk to Metal Armor.
And now, what are you working on?
Today's What Are You Working On focuses on one of the largest growing segments in the automotive industry, 80s cars and trucks, because they're cheap, they're easy to get. Now this is from Steve Schutze. He's from Staten, Oregon, and his project is an 81 Chevy El Camino that he got for $750. Yeah. Now, of course, in true hot rod fashion, the first thing he did is pull the motor out and take the engine from another project and stuff it in the car. It's a 350, here it is. Punched out, 30 over, Edelbrock Performer intake, Vortec heads, all the good stuff. And then here's a shot of it in the car. He does all the work himself, including the paint. On top of that, he said to keep the cost down, he painted the car in his driveway using a portable car canopy. Now take a look at the car, man. It actually came out really good. Man, what a great project. He's got the side pipes on, car's taking on some cool attitude. Matter of fact, Steve says he does all the work himself, and he did it in his single car garage or his driveway. And here's a shot of Steve under the hood working his magic on what he calls the El Camino. Now, when you ask him why the El Camino, Steve answers with, so he can race on all truck night or all car night. I mean, this is a guy that actually built this thing to use and drive, and that's what we like. Here's a shot of the interior. You can tell he spent some time in here. A little bit of junk on the floor. We love it. Now, the best part about this is, though, Steve's final statement. Here's his philosophy on life. It comes from the Red Green Show, and he says, if the girls don't find you handsome, at least they find you handy. Steve, that's great. Matter of fact, it's so cool, we're putting Steve back up here. Girls, there he is. You can see he's single. Do you find him handsome or do you find him handy? Or both? Now, the answer is up to you. We don't want to know. Steve, good luck to you. The rest of you guys, get out there and work on something. Send it in here to us. We'll try to get you on the air. We'll see you next week.